Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Father-Son Packers podcast, your source for Packers news, notes, and analysis. My name is Tommy, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, my dad, Matt. Dad, how are you doing?
I'm doing all right. I'm having trouble keeping track of the time of day and the darkness here of winter, but we'll power through it.
You know, in the bleak midwinter, as they would say, but we are here today to preview hopefully something, I guess we'll see, hopefully something not as bleak, but we are here to preview the Packers' upcoming matchup on Monday Night Football against the New York Giants in New York. Exciting stuff. We got a lot of interesting things to talk about, how we think the Packers are set up for this matchup, some things for the Giants that might pose the Packers problems, that is. Before we get into any of that, though, just wanted to pitch a couple of things. If you like what you heard here today, come give us a follow on Twitter at FatherSonPacker. We tweet out when we have new episodes out. We tweet out stats that we find interesting from when we're doing research for these podcasts. Tweet out articles we find interesting, pieces of Packers news, pieces of video analysis that other creators make that we find interesting. One-stop shopping for everything Titletown. And then subscribe to us on your podcast platform of choice, whether that's Apple, Google, Spotify. We even put all our episodes out on YouTube as well, so you can check them out there. But Dad, let's get into this preview because we have a lot to talk about. But before we do, just one little piece of news, and that we actually forgot to bring up in our last podcast, but that was that the Packers claimed corner David Long off of waivers from the Panthers, another corner added to that room, which put their roster size to 53. So they're at 53 now. Something to keep in mind, though, Eric Stokes, we get into the injury report, we'll talk a little more about this, but Eric Stokes looking like they're going to possibly bring him back this week for this game. If they did, they would need to make a corresponding move and cut someone off the roster. So that is something to keep an eye on. Just, for future reference, just keep that rumbling around in the back of your heads. But Dad, I mentioned the injury report. Let's get to that right away because we do have a lot to talk about. This injury report is as of Friday. We are recording to you Friday evening. We do not have the official designations out yet because it is a Monday game, so we will be seeing those tomorrow. Keep your eye on your feed on Twitter. We will be retweeting that and keeping it up to date. For the Packers, though, these practice reports are for Thursday and Friday. Let's just, start going through it. Jair Alexander for the Packers, limited participant both Thursday and Friday with a shoulder injury, same shoulder that's been keeping him out for a little while now. Devondre Campbell, that neck injury, limited Thursday and Friday. I believe this is the same neck injury, though, that he had, he was, I believe, questionable with last week coming into that game, and then was still able to play. So hopefully nothing too new there. Josiah DeGuara, a full participant both Thursday and Friday with that hip injury. So it's looking like the Packers are going to get him back. A.J. Dillon, limited Thursday and Friday with a groin injury. Believe that was the same one that was bugging him last week. He was still able to play. Rashawn Gary, limited Thursday and Friday with a shoulder injury. Elton Jenkins, limited Thursday, but did not participate Friday, also with a shoulder injury. Shoulders are the new hamstrings, Dad. I don't know if you knew that for the Packers. Matt LaFleur, in his presser today, though, said that they're just being cautious with Elton, so that's at least some good news there.
Yeah, I do not want to go without Elton, especially if Dexter Lawrence is able to play.
Especially if Dexter Lawrence is able to play. And we'll get into that side of the Giants injury report in just a second, because we're not even halfway done with the Packers one. We're still going through it. I just needed a quick little breather there to gather myself. Aaron Jones still coming back
right.
from that.
You can't go through this in one breath.
No, not at all. Aaron Jones still coming back from that MCL injury, but he was limited Thursday and Friday, so there's some optimism for his availability on Monday. It'd be great to get him back. Keyshawn Nixon with a wrist injury, full participant Thursday and Friday, nothing to worry about there. Jonathan Owens, knee injury, limited Thursday, Friday. Jaden Reed, chest injury, limited Thursday, Friday. That's that same one that, he's kind of just been dealing with intermittently, and it doesn't seem to have limited him too much. He just needs to take some days off here and there. Darnell Savage did not participate Thursday, was limited Friday, also with a chest injury. Eric Stokes, like we said, with that hamstring injury, still not off IR yet, but he was a full participant Thursday and Friday, and there's some optimism he'll be back by Monday. Quay Walker, this is a little concerning. Shoulder injury, did not participate either Thursday or Friday. That is one that is a little unexpected and something to keep an eye on there because,
Right. It seems,
Giants,
it's something new. It didn't have that last week.
No, exactly. And then Christian Watson, like we expected, hamstring, did not participate Thursday or Friday. He did say earlier in the week, we talked about that he didn't think it felt as bad as the injury that he had earlier in the season to his hamstring. And per Ryan Wood, he also said he has recently been consulting with several doctors, even outside of the facility, about injury prevention, and that the general consensus is that he needs to strengthen his back muscles so his hamstrings aren't overcompensating, because he is someone who both last year and this year has dealt with intermittent hamstring injuries, so not ideal there. And then Devontae Wyatt, elbow injury, limited Thursday and Friday. And then for Jair, just one thing I forgot to mention. He did say he wants to play, but he can't say for sure if he's going to be ready to go Monday. That kind of, leads me to believe maybe not for Monday, and maybe we're going to have to wait another week to see him, but we will wait and see. Dad, anything that stood out more from the Packers injury report?
I would say one of the concerning things is that some new injuries, like Wyatt, he was limited last week, but that was with a different injury than the elbow, so that's something new. And Walker with a brand new shoulder injury, and he's a DNP. So far, so he's going to have to practice on Saturday to be able to play. We have a couple of players who are resting or limited with injuries they've had for a couple of weeks, but have been playing anyway. I'm not so concerned about them, though. Maybe Reed has been even though he played, was a little limited with the chest injury. The last games he had, maybe not as active as he has been in other games. I guess we'll see. One of those things is probably just going to take a little time.
Yeah, probably going to take some time for him to get to 100%, but he hasn't missed a game with this chest injury, so there's at least that going for him. Onto the Giants side, though, they have 7 players listed. Daniel Bellinger, tight end, illness, didn't participate in practice on Friday, so looks like they got whatever's going around right now. Carter Coughlin, linebacker, hip injury, but he's a full participant Thursday and Friday. Just one quick note, though, the Giants did not practice on Thursday, so that Thursday practice is an estimation. Dexter Lawrence, this is an important one to keep an eye on because he is probably their best player on either side of the football. Was limited both Thursday and Friday with a hamstring injury. We know how fickle hamstrings can be, so that's going to be one to keep an eye on. Evan Neal, their starting right tackle, did not participate Thursday or Friday with an ankle injury. That's one to keep an eye on. He is normally their starting right tackle. He hasn't practiced this week and actually has not played since week 9. His backup per ESPN is Tyree Phillips, who has started their last 3 games and has started 5 total games this year. In those games, he is graded out slightly below average per PFF and is allowing about 3 pressures per game. So not a great backup right tackle and, has struggled a little bit. So that's going to be something to keep an eye on. Ashawn Robinson, one of their defensive linemen, is limited Thursday and Friday with a hamstring injury as well. Isaiah Simmons, linebacker, ankle injury, limited Thursday and Friday as well. And then Tyrod Taylor, quarterback, full participant Thursday and Friday, but it looks like they're going to stick with Tommy DeVito anyways on Monday. Dad, anything that stood out to you from the Giants injury report?
Well, I'd say the big one is it's got to be Dexter Lawrence, of course, because he's, I think, been out for a couple weeks now, and this might be the first week where he started to practice again. I think he missed weeks 12 and 13. But another what's kind of interesting is Tyrod Taylor is back to full participant, and yet they've already announced ahead of time that they're going to have DeVito be the starter instead of, let the Packers wonder who it was going to be. That was a little bit interesting decision. Yeah, I thought decision.
Yeah, Lawrence missed last week, week 12, or last week they played, that is, week 12. They were on bye this past week, so had an extra week to get himself right. We'll see if he's available in this game. He's one of the game's bright young stars, so, it'd be exciting to see him. Definitely be a little harder for the Packers if he plays, but definitely someone to keep an eye on and someone that we will discuss in the rest of this episode because lots to talk about. But Dad, let's get into the basics of this game and start with just the quick facts. Game's on Monday night in New York or New Jersey, I suppose. 8:15 p.m. local time. Supposed to be
greater New York metropolitan area, which is all of New Jersey and, all a bunch of other little states.
I was going to say a lot of states there. New York really lays claim to quite a bit of that area. But supposed to be 43 degrees around kickoff, and it's supposed to rain during the day leading up to the game. So keep an eye on that. Hopefully the rain doesn't push any later into the day because that would be pretty miserable.
Yeah, it's probably good that in terms of the conditions, it's better that it's Monday instead of Sunday. Where
Sunday looks miserable.
The East Coast is just going to be a mess.
Yeah. Packers are 6.5-point favorites on the road, which is, quite a bit on the road, with an over-under of 36.5 for an implied score of around 21-15 Green Bay. Low-scoring game, it looks like they're thinking, and, Green Bay's favored by almost a touchdown, which is quite a lot on the road. People clearly seem to be, riding the Green Bay high. Dad, feels a little like a trap game, but, it is what it is. Just got to go out there and execute. Do you want to just get into the meat of the game preview, or anything you wanted to say about that spread, that line, et cetera, et cetera?
I mean, it feels so much like a trap game. Okay, we played the good teams. We're playing well. Everything's cruising. We're playing a team that we should beat. Yeah.
Yeah. And yet,
just give you any vibes of last year's run of Giants, Jets. It's like, oh, we got this great easy schedule coming up.
Nope, no such thing. No such thing. And the thing is, I'm just thinking back to, I don't even need to think back that far. I'm thinking back to, lost to the Lions. We get a bounce back game here against the Raiders. Nope. Oh, we lost to the Raiders. We got our bye. We got a bounce back game here against the Broncos. Nope.
With Broncos.
We lost to the Broncos. We get a bounce back game here against the Vikings with no Justin Jefferson. Actually, at that point, I was out on thinking of games as bounce back games. At that point, I was like, nope, there's no such thing. But yeah, I think
we were already starting to get into we're somebody's bounce back game now.
But then we turned into someone's trap game. But now the Giants are our trap game. But so got to focus up. Dad, a little keeping up with the Joneses, though. Let's talk a little bit about what's been going on with the Giants. They're currently 4-8 and coming off of their bye. Like we said, they had a bye in week 13. But before the bye, they were coming off back-to-back wins against the Commanders and the Patriots. Traditional statistics, these are per team rankings, are not great for the Giants. They are 31st in points per game on offense with 13.3 points per game. 32nd in yards per game on offense, 258.7. And then on defense, 26th in points per game allowed at 24.3, and 28th in yards per game allowed at 364.3 yards per game allowed on defense. That is quite a bit by DVOA per FTN Fantasy, which actually takes into account opponent, strength of schedule, etc. On offense, they are 31st overall, 31st in passing, and 31st in rushing. And then on defense, they are 26th overall.
That's the kind of consistency you like to see.
That's the kind of consistency you like to see in your opponent, we will say. But 26th overall on defense, 16th against the pass, and 30th against the rush. So, they're doing a little bit against the rush. Dad, anything to say there? Should we go into your favorite section? We're playing nice and saying some nice things about the Giants. Where do you want to go with this?
Okay. Is it I guess it's not nice to say I had to do some digging to find something nice to say.
Always have to couch everything in this section. You always have to be like, I looked really long and hard.
Well, sometimes you can only find something. I have to throw somebody else under the bus to prop somebody up. Well, I don't know if I did, but actually the Giants have been, you talked about how they're kind of bottom of the league in a lot of the numbers on offense and defense, but they've been actually pretty good at covering receiving by running backs and tight ends. They give up the 5th fewest receptions and the 5th fewest receiving yards to running backs per game, and the 7th fewest receiving yards and the 3rd fewest receptions to tight ends. So they're doing a pretty good job at limiting production by tight ends and by running backs through the air. By DVOA at FTN Fantasy, they are 9th best in covering running backs and number 1 in defending tight ends. Not surprisingly, you think about where they're usually catching the ball. They're also highly rated in covering the short part of the field, ranking 7th by DVOA.
Yeah,
so they do have a little bit of area where they're doing well.
Yeah, I also had, my nice thing to say about them was also with regards to their defense. Despite overall not being the best, like we said, 26th overall per DVOA. Wink Martindale is a very experienced and very aggressive defensive coordinator. And right now he's coordinating, not a very overall down-to-down super successful defense, but a very opportunistic defense right now. Per Pro Football Reference, they are tied for 9th in the league in total takeaways and 12th in percentage of drives ending in a turnover. They currently have the 5th highest interception rate in the NFL. This is kind of illustrated also by the fact that they are 15th in EPA per dropback, while being 27th in dropback success rate per RBSTM. That kind of indicates essentially that they're getting a lot of big plays on defense and maybe not allowing as many big plays from the opposing team. But down to down, they're, struggling. But, they're ending drives and turnovers, and that's how they're winning right now. They're being very opportunistic. Per Pro Football Reference, like I said, they're very aggressive. They blitz at the 2nd highest rate in the league on 41% of dropbacks. Now, we said last week, talking about how the Chiefs were very aggressive blitzing. Giants are on an entirely different level from that. The Chiefs were 4th in the league, but the gap between 2nd and 4th is as big as the gap between 4th and 13th. The Giants are blitzing on 41% of dropbacks right now, which is just an obscenely high rate.
That's
It's just the Wink
crazy
Martindale
high.
special. Like, that's what he does. He will just keep blitzing over and over again. Like, if you watched, the one that really stands out to me is the Giants Niners Thursday night game from this year. They just blitzed every single down, and it didn't, like, it kind of worked. Like, I don't know. It's just, they're just throwing guys at them. So yes, very opportunistic defense, very aggressive defense. So that's kind of the positives that I had to say about the Giants. Dad, anything else to say there, or should we go about what we're specifically nervous about in terms of maybe some Giants strengths that are some Packers weaknesses?
Yeah, I think they can jump right into that.
Well,
Did you want to go first?
no, I'll
Or
throw to
I'll-
you. Go ahead. Yeah, what are you
So,
nervous about in this matchup for how the Giants
I'm
match
nervous
up?
about one of the things that the Packers have struggled with, and that's the run game. So, specifically about Saquon Barkley, because they don't really have many other weapons that really are scary, unless like all of a sudden Jalen Hyatt, channels his last year at Tennessee against us, which I suppose that could happen.
It's entirely possible. I've seen our safeties play a good amount. I mean, that's not fair. They've played pretty well this year.
They've been playing pretty well lately,
Yeah.
and stepping up in the run game. But even though people might say that Barkley's not having a great year, he's still averaging over 4 yards a carry, 4.2, and he is 16th in the league in yards after contact per carry. Actually, he's at 3.07. So he's actually doing, and so his margin of before contact is pretty small for running backs who are as high as he is in total yardage. He's getting like barely over a yard before contact, and some people are like 3 or 4 yards before contact. So he's had to do a lot of the work himself. And among just running backs, he's 9th in runs over 10 yards and tied for 5th in runs for more than 15 yards. So he is still producing some explosive plays. And he can also, one of their better pass catchers out of the backfield, and including lining up a decent amount in the slot and even out wide. And he's got 12 first downs receiving.
Yeah, I mean, we all know Saquon. Saquon's been a dynamic player pretty much since he entered the league, as long as he's been healthy. The Packers have struggled against running backs. That's definitely a matchup that I was nervous with. The one that I am nervous with is something that actually I had to delve kind of deeply into and kind of fell into on accident. And that is mainly late down running situations I'm a little bit nervous with. And that's the Packers on offense and the Giants on defense. Now, I know we talked about overall the Giants run defense is not very good. 30th by DVOA, 30th in yards per carry allowed per team rankings at 4.8 yards per carry, which is even worse than the Packers, who at 4.5. 29th in EPA per rush per RBSDM, 24th in rushing success rate per RBSDM, and they've given up over 100 yards rushing in all but 2 games this year per StatMuse. So overall, their run defense is not very good on the whole. But on 3rd and 4th down, they are all the way up at 11th in EPA per rush, EPA allowed per rush, and 3rd in rushing success rate allowed. 3rd, they are a top 3 run defense at, essentially stopping first downs on 3rd and 4th down. That's a crazy split in terms of how poor they are overall and how well they are playing on those late downs. Contrast that with the fact that the Packers' late down run offense on 3rd and 4th downs is below average. 20th in EPA per rush, 19th in rushing success rate. And even if you do the cuts, so the Packers offense has been much better since the Rams game in week 9. Even if you cut it from there to now, they're actually worse on late down rushes. 28th in EPA per rush on 3rd and 4th down. 25th in rushing success rate on 3rd and 4th down. So, over that time span, that is. So it's definitely something that I was not expecting to see, and definitely something where I'm like, okay, not converting on a few 3rd and shorts, a few 4th and shorts, turning the ball over on downs is a way that this game could be swung towards the Giants' favor. So that's something that, we talked a little bit about the Giants' defense being opportunistic in terms of turnovers. This is another way that their defense is opportunistic, winning those 3rd and shorts, 4th and shorts, and getting the ball back on downs that you'd normally expect the offense to succeed.
I did a little quick look at their 3rd down conversion rate against for the year. So not just on the run plays, but they're 5th in the league. And
don't worry, I'm going to talk about that more later. I have that in here.
Okay, you've already got that in there.
No, because I think that the 3rd down battle is actually going to be, 3rd down and short rushing is in favor of the Giants. Third down overall is going to be a very interesting battle because both these teams have some, claims to being like, hey, we're actually pretty decent on third down on defense. Hey, we're actually pretty decent on third down on offense. And I think that's going to be an interesting battle, and we'll talk about that a little more in detail later. The other thing that I'm a little nervous about is Dexter Lawrence specifically. He is their star defensive player. We talked about already. He should probably play in this game. He's limited Thursday and Friday, like we said. He didn't play last week, or last time they played, but they are coming off a bye last week, so he's had a little extra rest. PFF has him as their second highest graded defender at any position. At any position, he is their second best defender. He is second amongst all interior defensive linemen in total pressures. He is first amongst all qualifying interior D linemen. So I did 150 snaps and 100 pass rush snaps in pressure rate, and that's total pressures divided by pass rush snaps, and 16th amongst all defenders. He is 19th in run stop rate per PFF amongst players with 100 run defense snaps, 11th amongst all interior D linemen. And he's also third amongst D tackles in ESPN pass rush win rate. So any way you slice it, any metric you find, run, pass, he is a great defender in the middle. And he is something I'm a little nervous about because we'll talk about it later. Packers interior O-line has some question marks, has some strength question marks specifically, like functional play strength, in my opinion, especially if Elton doesn't end up going, which, fingers crossed he does. And they did say it's just precautionary. But if he doesn't, I'm getting a little nervous there, Dad. But let's start.
Yeah, do I recall correctly that he had a big game against us last year in London?
Oh, goodness. That is a good question. I do not remember how he performed in that game off the top of my head. But Dad, let's move on to some exploitable weaknesses of the Giants, because there are some to be found. And I think we can, at least be a little optimistic at times during this podcast. We start with the negative and then we move on to the positive. For me, though, Dad, some exploitable weaknesses of the Giants. I'll go ahead and start us off. I talked about their late down run defense being good, and I talked about their overall run defense being bad. The math works out that means that their early down run defense is really bad. I think that's kind of how the math ends up being, and the numbers bear that out. And so I think that's somewhere that the Packers can exploit that, because the Giants are 28th in EPA per rush allowed on first and second down, and 29th in rushing success rate allowed on first and second down per RBSDM. And also their pass rush isn't particularly good either. They are 20th in pressure percentage per Pro Football Reference. And keep in mind, that's with having the second highest blitz rate in the league. So they're sending extra guys, and they're still not getting a ton of pressures per dropback, which, that's not great. And then they are 30th in sack rate per Pro Football Reference. Again, given the fact that they're sending extra guys rushing on 41% of dropbacks, and they're still not getting a high number of pressures, and they're still not converting a high number of sacks, that's pretty bad in terms of how a pass rush should look when you're sending that many guys. Dad, what did you have as some exploitable weaknesses of the Giants?
Oh, I just wanted to add a little something while you were vamping. I looked up Dexter Lawrence. He did not kill us in London. He's only credited with 2 pressures.
Two pressures from an interior D lineman is a pretty decent day, I would say, actually.
In 57 snaps.
I'd still say 2 pressures is a pretty good day from an interior D lineman. Yeah. I'd say that's a fairly strong day. It's not like a super strong day for him, but I'd say that's an above average interior defensive lineman in performance. But you're right, that isn't like killing us. That's true.
Right.
But Dad, things that are exploitable weaknesses of the Giants.
So I went to their on the offensive side of the ball. Their pass protection and sack rate on offense are terrible. By DVOA at FTN Fantasy, they are dead last in adjusted sack rate on offense. So who's to blame? The O-line is bad by several metrics. They are dead last in pass blocking by PFF grade. By ESPN pass block win rate as a team, they're 27th. And DeVito is the 9th highest pressured QB based on percent of dropbacks. But it's not just a him problem, because Daniel Jones was even worse. He was the second most pressured quarterback by PFF. However, DeVito definitely makes it worse. He is dead last in pressure to sack conversion rate among quarterbacks with at least 50 dropbacks at 47.5%. So almost half of the times he gets pressured, it gets turned into a sack.
And he's getting pressured on half of his dropbacks. So it's really compounding
it's
there.
Crazy high. Yeah. And he's also the 5th slowest in terms of time to throw in the league. So he's getting rid of the ball really slowly, and he's getting pressured.
Yeah, and in his 3 starts this year, he's averaging almost 7 taken sacks a game, which is just really tough. And I know he has played in that stretch both the Cowboys and the Patriots, who are some top-tier defenses, but that's still a lot of sacks to be taking. Like, that's a very tough way to live on offense.
Yeah, and so that's I think a really exploitable weakness, an obvious exploitable weakness of their offense. And on defense, I talked about how they're a little bit better at covering the short part of the field, but they are bad at defending the deep middle of the field. They're like 24th in the league, especially the deep middle. And the coverage rates of their outside corners also been bad this year. Deontay Banks, Adoree Jackson, and Trey Hawkins all have PFF coverage grades in the 40s, well below the kind of average of 60.
Yeah, well below. There are definitely some ways to, get after this, Giants offense. There's ways to get after this Giants defense. But Dad, how do you hope the Packers approach this matchup specifically? Like, what do you want to see from the Packers in this one?
So I want to see the Packers take that playbook they had against the Pittsburgh Steelers and burn it to the ground and bury it deep and never see it again. I want them to play aggressively up front on defense with heavy boxes and an aggressive pass rush until DeVito has shown he can hurt them. I do not want to see a repeat where they're like light boxes and getting run on over and over again.
Yeah, I have something very similar. I have essentially make Tommy DeVito beat you. You cannot have a repeat of the Steelers game where you're coming into the game knowing that the opponent's quarterback is a question mark and you just simply don't adjust the entire game to getting the ball ran down your throat for 4 quarters. It happened in that Steelers game. It happened to a lesser extent in the Atlanta game. You can't afford for that to happen in this game because if you can stop them from really running it on you, you should be able to win this game. And you just take away the strong suit of focus on the strong suit of the opposing team and don't play against guys like Kenny Pickett, Desmond Ridder, Tommy DeVito, like they're Patrick Mahomes. Like, you don't need to keep an umbrella on top all the time against like lower tier quarterbacks, in my opinion. Over the weeks that DeVito has been a starter, so that's weeks 10 to 12, in that time span, he has ranked 36th in EPA per play amongst quarterbacks, 36th in success rate, 26th in completion.
Remind your listeners there are only 32 teams in the league.
26th in completion percentage over expectation, 21st in average depth of target. Like I said, to his credit, he struggled versus the Patriots and Dallas, and those are 2 very good defenses. And he did have a pretty good game against the Commanders where he threw for like 230 yards and 3 touchdowns. But you just have to play this game and make Tommy DeVito beat you. And if he starts beating you in the first half, you can make adjustments at halftime. You don't need to play the same way the whole game. The game plan that you came in with, like, you can make tweaks to it. So that's my main thing, is you just can't have a repeat of that Steelers game. I think you and I are 100% on the same page there. Dad, it looks like you had something on offense too, though, that you hope the Packers did.
Yeah, so on offense, I want to see them attack the deep portions of the field, especially deep middle, where the Giants' coverage is not so good, and the Packers have weapons in that area. So this could probably be looking for targets to Dobbs, Wicks, and Reed if Watson's out, which seems to be trending that way and kind of what we expected by the end of the last game. But we still have players who can attack that portion of the field, even if Watson has to sit out.
Yeah, it is a little tough.
I want to see them be aggressive passing downfield.
Yeah, some of our best attackers in the middle field were like, Musgrave, Watson, but we still have guys who are talented attacking that deep middle. So it's going to be interesting, and I hope we are able to take advantage of that. Dad, let's move on to our next section, though. Don't take your eye off that guy. This is either who we think is going to be the player of the game, a player whose performance is really going to impact the game usually, someone who's like, if they play well, like their team is going to succeed. If they play poorly, their team is going to struggle. Dad, who is your player in that respect?
So the guy that I'm going to pick to keep my eye on is TJ Slayton, particularly defending the run. Although his PFF run D grade is not that high, he does have the most stops against the run on the team and the highest stop percentage, and leads all of the Packers' interior defensive linemen in tackles against the run.
He is, to me, a guy who is either making the tackle or getting absolutely blown out of the play by like a double team. There's no in between with him. He just can't hold up to double teams despite his like large size. I feel like that's the thing that I get frustrated with him the most right now.
Yeah, and I was just looking up about Barkley's run. Most of his yards are actually coming from like guard to guard. He does have some yardage like outside the left end, but the most of it is like from left tackle, sorry, from left guard to right guard, and so that's really kind of in the wheelhouse of the nose tackle to try to hold up at the point of attack and keep the other defenders clean to make the tackle.
Yeah, I think that's 100% right. I think you could have picked a lot of players on the defensive line in terms of like key cogs for this one because I do think the run defense is going to be very important. For me, I went the other way. We talked a lot about how impactful Dexter Lawrence can be. And so I picked the person who's most likely going to be his direct matchup. I picked Josh Myers. Dexter Lawrence has lined up in the A gap on 55% of his snaps per PFF. So majority of his time is going against centers. Per Zach Cruz, this is actually kind of interesting. Myers is actually the sixth highest graded center per PFF over the last 4 weeks. So he's actually had a run of pretty good play right now. And, he's coming off a game where obviously not him alone, but they played against Chris Jones, who is also a very talented defensive tackle. And he didn't destroy the game. He beat them quite a few times. He was in the backfield a good amount, but he didn't totally wreck the game. Like the 4th and 1, he's absolutely in Jordan Love's lap. And then there's another play where Love has to completely peel out and he ends up rushing for a first down, but Chris Jones is in the backfield very quickly. The fact, like, guys that are that good, like Jones, like Dexter Lawrence, like Aaron Donald, are going to win. Like, they're going to get theirs. But you just can't let them absolutely take over the game. And so that's something that I'm keeping my eye on here. I would love to see, some extra help for Myers, some extra help for the guards, doubling Lawrence, because I'm not particularly afraid of the other guys on that line right now. Kayvon Thibodeau is like a decent player out on the edge, but it's just something where I think Lawrence is the one that you really need to keep an eye on. And so Myers, he's going to have his hands full with that one. But at the same time, I think that, he's going to have to play a good game for he can't play a terrible game and the Packers win, I guess is more what I'm saying on this one.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Thibodeau is kind of interesting. You mentioned him. I think he's got a decent number of sacks, but his like pressure to sack ratio is maybe not sustainable. He's been converting a lot of unusually high number of his pressures to sacks.
Yeah. So, but anyway, Dad, those are our players to watch. But let's go to overtime. And these are kind of some pieces of information that we just wanted to drop as little nuggets that didn't quite fit in our, nice little boxes. For me, though, we already kind of talked about this and teased it. Late downs overall is something that I'm really keeping my eye on in this one. We talked earlier about how the Giants have a very good late down run defense and the Packers have a generally poor late down run offense. But offense and defense as a whole, Packers offense, Giants defense, I think this is going to be a battle on those late downs and might end up swinging the game. Giants are the fourth best defense overall. So not just run defense in terms of EPA per play on 3rd and 4th down. They are the 6th best defense overall in terms of success rate allowed on 3rd and 4th down. And they, like you said earlier, allowed the 5th lowest 3rd down conversion rate in the NFL at about 35%. Those are per RBSTM and team rankings, respectively. It should make for an interesting battle, though, because right now the Packers are 11th in EPA per play on 3rd and 4th down for the season, 11th in success rate on 3rd and 4th down, and the 6th best 3rd down conversion rate at about 44%, RBSTM and team rankings, respectively, right there. So, very interesting in terms of, I think, those late downs are always very much turning points in the game at times. And I think, we have a team that's very, very good at late down defense, that is, and then a team that is, almost top 10 at in most metrics at late down offense. So definitely something I'm keeping my eye on there. And then the other thing that I just wanted to touch on is the Giants defense has been very opportunistic, but the Giants offense is very reliant on the defense taking the ball away. This is per Zach Cruz on Twitter. Over their past, 2-game win streak, the 2 games that they've won, 34 of the Giants' 41 points have come off of turnovers. So that's definitely something to keep in mind, and that's something that I'm keeping my eye on is, if the Packers can limit mistakes on offense, will they be able to, stifle the Giants' offense a little bit as well? But Dad, what did you have for this overtime section? Anything that you still wanted to discuss?
Oh, I just thought I'd chime in a little bit about the 3rd and 4th down thing. So over the last 3 games, or actually that's even 4 games. Jordan Love is 7th in the league in EPA per play and completion percentage over expected per play on 3rd and 4th downs. So he's been heating up in those situations as well.
Yeah.
For that competition with the Giants' 3rd and 4th down defense that's been performing well.
Isn't it weird how like the Giants' defense is bad, and then on 3rd and 4th down, it's just remarkably very good? I don't really get it.
Yeah,
I don't understand how that happens.
And you and I were talking about this before we came on. It's like is there a particular aspect of their defense that's always good, but becomes more important on 3rd and 4th down? And the answer to that was I couldn't find it. So they're just making more plays on those high pressure downs, not like it's those downs are revealing something they're always good at.
Yeah, to me, it doesn't make a lot of sense. The only thing I could think, and this was just for the 3rd and 4th down run defense success that they've had, is that Dexter Lawrence's role gets way more amplified in those scenarios in like 3rd and 4th and short, with him being like this big beefy guy on the interior. But I don't know how it's overall, and maybe there are more 3rd and 4th down like run scenarios than there are pass scenarios, and so they're able to like leverage his talent on those 3rd and 4th and shorts into being successful in those scenarios. And so then it's overall just affect like their overall defensive numbers look really good. That was the only thing I could think of, because otherwise, like you said, they're playing better on 3rd and 4th downs is the only other thing we could think of really, which, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what it could be, but this is what the numbers are telling us, is that, 3rd and 4th down, they're a very good defense. 3rd and 4th down, Packers are a pretty good offense. So we're going to go and see about that. Dad, anything else you wanted to touch on in overtime though?
Well, just one thing I'd comment on that occurred to me while you're talking is like, I don't know what their personnel is like on 3rd and 4th down versus other downs. And I don't know, like Lawrence's snap percentage. Maybe he's playing more on 3rd and 4th down than on like 2nd down.
Fair.
Or there's somebody else who's like that their personnel is actually different in those downs. And maybe that explains why they're so good in those situations.
Yeah, and it's remarkable to be that good on 3rd and 4th down. Also, I know we're harping on this a bit, when you're that bad on 1st and 2nd down, because you're letting them get ahead of the sticks. You're letting them get into 3rd and manageable. And
now
you're still,
we have them right where we want them.
I was going to say, you get them into 3rd and 2 and you just turn up the heat, I guess. Like, I don't really understand how that's happening there. But anyway, high leverage downs are going to be something to watch in this game, because it could come down to, getting stopped on 4th down a couple of times. Like, that could just be the difference in the game. But Dad, let's kind of start wrapping up here, and let's get down to the bottom line. The Giants win if blank, Dad. How do the Giants win this game?
Well, I just had one other my little another overtime thing.
I'm sorry, I jumped the gun a little bit. Go back to overtime.
But the Giants are actually on a little bit of a heater for their coverage grade. They've had an elite coverage grade in their last 2 games that they won against the Commanders and Patriots. Now, maybe that's mostly because they've had 3 interceptions in both of those games. But both those games have had a coverage grade as a team over 85. However, in the previous 10, they only had 1 coverage grade over 64 and none with a grade over 66. And so have they improved, or is this just a blip in the radar to think about?
You talked about how they had 3 interceptions in each of the last 2 games. They have 9 takeaways overall over their last 2 games.
Yeah.
Which is just, they're on a heater right now in terms of like getting hands on the ball, stripping the ball, like et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And like we said, they're scoring most of their points off of those turnovers these last 2 games. And that's how they've been able to win. So something to keep an eye on is ball security is going to be, once again, at a premium in this game. Packers are going to have to protect the ball. And, the Packers have actually not turned the ball over in this 3-game win streak. So that's something as well to, keep in mind. But Dad, bottom line, once again, let's try this again. Unless there's anything more you wanted to touch on overtime. I'm gonna let you talk a little more this time.
This time.
This time?
It's diabolical.
But anyway, bottom line, Giants win if blank, Dad.
They run all over the Packers like the Steelers did, and Saquon has 200 yards.
Okay. And
if it goes like that, I would hate it. That would drive me absolutely nuts.
Yes, 100%. I'm just imagining, a very wet, slippery field. Packers missing some tackles here and there, letting him get out, getting
Just
pushed back in
right.
the run game.
They're going to like hose his jersey down if it's not raining enough.
I know, right? Hose the field down, make it a little slick out there. Packers are used to playing on a slick field, though, so maybe work in their advantage. For me, though, Dad, Giants win if they can win the turnover battle. Talked about how their offense is very, very dependent on those turnovers in terms of getting short fields. Talked about how that's how they've won their last 2 games, forcing 9 turnovers over those 2 games. Almost all of their points are coming from turnovers. I think that's the way the Giants win this game. And if the Packers can just protect the football, and I'll talk about that in a second. Dad, Packers win if blank.
So for me, it's if they can force the Giants into passing situations. And then I think they'll get multiple sacks. But I think if they force the passing situations, I think they're going to get multiple sacks and completely blow up the Giants defense.
Yeah.
I think if DeVito has to drop back and pass, he's going to be running for his life.
Mm-hmm. For me, Packers win if they can play mistake-free, patient football, and it can avoid getting into, too many third down scenarios. I think, just stay ahead of the sticks. Let's just not even play on. If we just don't even have third downs, that'd be great.
If you just get one first down after another on first and second down, it doesn't matter how good the third and fourth down defense is.
Exactly. So that's the game. I mean, I'm sure that would be a great blueprint for almost every team. It's like, oh, just don't have third downs, then you'll just win. Yeah, like no duh. But anyways, Dad, let's kind of start wrapping things up here. Score prediction. What do you got?
So for me, I don't see the Giants scoring many points. So I'm being very optimistic and going Packers 24, Giants 13.
Okay. I see what you're saying. I am taking the Packers as well, but I got Packers 20, Giants 17. I think the Packers are better than that, but I don't think they're going to end up covering a 6.5. And I think it's going to get a little messier than maybe we would like, or maybe than we would hope. But as long as they come out with a win on Monday, I'll be happy. But anyway, Dad, this has been our preview for the Packers' upcoming Monday night showdown against the New York Giants in New York or New Jersey, however you want to. East Rutherford, at MetLife, that is. Oh, the other thing is, Dad, mention this is on turf. And this is
the field that everybody hates.
Let's just say a little, put some good vibes out there. This is the field that, per The Athletic, they polled players, the most hated field in the NFL. This is the field where a lot of players have gotten injured in the past. Let's just say a little, put some good vibes out there for both teams. Let's just no injuries on this terrible turf that everyone hates. Let's knock on wood. Let's just put some good vibes out into the universe because obviously most important thing is health for everyone. MetLife is generally considered to be one of the worst stadiums. Let's just put those good vibes out there. But anyway, thanks again for listening. We will be giving you a breakdown pod after this game on Monday. We'll probably be giving that pod to you on Tuesday night, so we'll probably see it Wednesday in your feeds. Keep an eye on it. If you like what you heard here today, come give us a follow on Twitter at FatherSonPacker. We tweet out new episodes we have, articles we find interesting, pieces of stats that we find during our research for these episodes, videos we find interesting, Packers news, Packers transactions, etc. One-stop shopping for everything Titletown. And then subscribe to us on your podcast platform of choice, whether that's Apple Podcasts, Google, Spotify. We even put all our episodes out on YouTube. You can find them there. If you subscribe to us there, it would really help our numbers, and we would appreciate it. Tell your friends, tell your family, come give us some more listeners. We don't bite. We are here giving you 2 episodes a week for the rest of the year, and then we do 1 episode a week every week for the off season, talking about stuff like the draft, talking about free agency, talking about how we felt like the Packers performed this year, but that's still a long way off, hopefully a very long way off. You never know. But anyway, moving forward, come give us another listen. And until next time, go Pack Go.
Go Pack Go.